we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen.
It must have seemed crazy at the time, but Apple's visionary founder Steve Jobs knew what he was doing. 10 years after the first iPhone unveiling, the device has revolutionized the world of information sharing, gaming, and social media. More than 1 billion iPhones have been sold, helping Apple become one of the top tech companies on the planet. Hard to imagine what the world was like 10 years and 1 day ago, but this guy, Graham Williams, our tech analyst, can give us a sense of that, beginning with that announcement.
Well, looking back to that day, I mean, 1 day before, we were looking at phones like the Motorola Razr and the BlackBerry Pearl as being sort of the state of the art. And then suddenly this device is here, and there is no keyboard, there are no buttons outside of the home button and the volume, and we're being asked to think of this thing as three things. It was a phone, it was a music player, and it was an internet communicator. And this was so groundbreaking that Steve had to ask us, did we get it? And of course, eventually we did.
And some of his key competitors not only didn't get it, they scoffed at it.
Really, when you take a look back, there are two major players that I can think of. There was Steve Ballmer with Microsoft, and then there were the two CEOs from Research in Motion who looked at this device and went, now we got this. And of course, if you take a look today, Microsoft's phone division and both BlackBerry have become sort of remnants of the past. It really was sort of take a look at the iPhone, and if you see it as a challenger, then great, you're going to be able to do something. But if you don't, you're no longer going to be in the landscape 10 years later.
Seen by some, and I believe the BlackBerry executives were among them, as a gimmick, as a toy, as something that just wouldn't hang on, and yet it's transformed so much. Let's start with the changes it made to the world of consumer electronics.
Well, looking at the world of consumer electronics, we have to look at sort of what the iPhone was when it began and then what it became as time went on. Originally, again, this was a phone, a music player, an internet communicator, and then it became a GPS. We had a compass added to this, and we had maps added to that, and then you start taking a look at the consumer GPS market, which back in 2007 was huge. I don't know if I can remember the last time I heard someone say, guess what, I bought a brand new GPS for my car. Yeah. Following that, there was the digital camera market, and that really started with the iPhone 4, with this beautiful new camera that they put into this device. And that's really where, if you take a look at Flickr, it sort of crossed over. There were some major players like Canon and Nikon that had the most photos on Flickr, and then suddenly the iPhone started to skyrocket. And so we've seen that where the point-and-shoot market really for a lot of these players has cratered. It's gone. They still have very, very strong markets and actually growing markets in DSLRs and in interchangeable lens cameras, because as people reach sort of the limits of their mobile phone, they start thinking, I want to do more in photography. So it's actually been good for consumer electronics in some spaces.
And then what about the way it's changed our lives?
Well, I mean, I think that if you take a look at how we all used phones back in 2006 and before that, these were devices that we used for calling each other and we used for texting. I know a lot of people who right now, if they get a phone call on their phone, they're actually kind of furious because really, why aren't you messaging me? Why aren't you sending me some sort of communication in a different way? These are devices that have really been integrated in a very deep way, right? It's something that is our schedule. We talk to it, we listen to it. Our TV shows are on there, our movies are on there. And if we need to know something, what do? We just ask it out loud. So it really has revolutionized how we look at that little piece of plastic or that little piece of glass that's in our pocket. It's been a very powerful thing, and I think that we have to say, and I would say this, that this is probably the most important thing that's happened in the technology world in the last 10 years.
So you don't say that lightly, right? I mean, you think of we're in a time period where technology is changing so quickly. You've had a little chance to think about this before you came down to talk to us, and you would say it is the most significant technological innovation of the last 10 years.
I would, yes. I mean, if we take a look at all of the major players, all of the moving pieces, right? If we take a look at Apple, if we take a look at Google, if we take a look at Samsung, if we take a look at Microsoft, every single company, their direction was changed by the iPhone, right? The original Android phones looked like BlackBerries. Microsoft, when you take a look at Windows 8, had this cohesive strategy of everything being touch. Samsung, clearly, one of their major divisions is focused around, creating mobile phones just like this. So if we take a look at the technology world, there's nothing else in the last 10 years that I say has changed the direction so drastically more than the iPhone.
All right. Really nice talking to you, Graham. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And let's take a live look outside our studio here in Vancouver. We've been through this stretch of, well, it's all relative, I know, but cold weather for us, and that's going to continue later this week. And of course, those of you in Toronto bracing, as Johanna said, for some snow. We're back in an hour. See you then.